It all started with a letter, just a plain white envelope tucked into our mailbox, stamped with the seal of the Homeowners Association. We didn't think much of it at first. It's probably a reminder about trash day or a neighborhood meeting.
8.
What we found inside was the beginning of a nightmare. A nightmare named Karen. She was the president of our HOA. And from the moment we moved in, she made it her mission to control every inch of our lives: where we parked, what flowers we planted, even the shade of beige we painted our fence. But things quickly went from annoying to downright personal. Karen wasn't just picky, she was ruthless. Fines started showing up almost weekly, some for things we never even did. She'd take pictures of our yard at odd hours, dig through past approvals, and twist every tiny rule just to make our lives harder. At first, we tried to stay calm, follow the rules, and not stir the pot. But Karen wasn't after fairness, she was after power and money. That's when we started noticing something fishy about the way she ran the HOA funds. Maintenance projects that never happened, upcharges with no receipts. And somehow, the fees kept getting higher. It was like she'd built an empire within the neighborhood, and no one had dared to challenge her. Until now. I wasn't going to let her bully us anymore. So I started digging. Public records, HOA, meeting minutes, vendor contracts, anything I could get my hands on. And what I found? Let's just say Karen had more skeletons than our attic. But exposing her wouldn't be easy. She had connections, influence, and a scary grip on the board. Still, the truth had to come out. So I made a plan. I had one shot to bring her entire operation down. But just when I thought I had her cornered, everything flipped and the cops showed up. Not for her. For me. You won't believe how far this went. And who was secretly helping her all along. The moment the police lights flashed outside our house, I felt my stomach drop. I thought I had covered everything, kept it clean, followed the right channels, gathered solid proof. But as the officers walked up the driveway and asked for me by name, I realized something wasn't adding up. Karen had gotten ahead of me. Somehow, she flipped the script before I could even show anyone what I had found. And now, instead of her being questioned, I was the one being taken in. But to understand how we got here, you need to know who Karen really was. She wasn't just some nosy neighbor with too much time on her hands. She had been on the HOA board for over 8 years. Over time, she had replaced almost everyone else on the board with her friends or people who owed her favors. She used fear and confusion to stay in control. Most of the neighbors either didn't care or were too afraid to speak up. Some even believed she was doing a good job because the lawns were neat and the streets stayed quiet. But behind the scenes, she was charging the HOA for bogus services, double billing vendors, and even funneling funds into a side company that, get this, she ran under a different name. I started piecing it all together when I found a weird charge. On one of our quarterly statements, it was labeled Landscape Beautification Project. Problem was, no such project had happened. I called the number listed next to the charge, and it led to a voicemail for a company I'd never heard of. But when I searched the business address, it was registered to a P.O. box and the person behind it, Karen's cousin. That's when I knew this wasn't just about power, it was about profit. She was bleeding the neighborhood dry, hiding behind HOA rules and playing the long game. And the craziest part, she had help. There were people on the inside helping cover her tracks, backing her every move. But the real question was, how did she know I was onto her? And how did she turn the police against me before I could even show them the truth? The ride to the station was quiet, but my head was loud with questions. I wasn't arrested technically. They said they just needed to ask a few questions, but the looks on the officers' faces told a different story. I knew Karen had pulled strings. She'd spun some kind of story, probably full of just enough truth to make me look like the villain. And the worst part? I didn't know how much she really knew. Maybe she'd seen the documents I'd printed, or maybe someone close to me had tipped her off. That thought hit harder than anything, the idea that someone I trusted might have been feeding her information. Back at the station, they asked about unauthorized access to HOA files. Apparently, someone had reported a breach in the HOA's digital records. They said there was an anonymous login attempt flagged just days before it. Guess what? It traced back to my IP address. But I hadn't hacked anything. Everything I found was through public records and files I requested through the proper process. Still, it was enough to make me look guilty if the story was told the wrong way. Karen had planted the perfect seed of doubt. Meanwhile, things in the neighborhood were getting weirder. One of my neighbors, Mark, had suddenly stopped talking to me altogether. A week earlier, he'd given me a copy of an old HOA expense report, one that showed a missing $4,000 from a supposed security system upgrade that never happened. Now, total silence. Wouldn't return my calls. I even saw him talking to Karen in her driveway, looking nervous, like he'd been caught between a rock and a hard place. It started to feel like everyone was choosing side. My side was shrinking fast. At home, I had to be careful. I stopped using Wi-Fi and started printing everything in secret. I even hid documents in the attic. I knew I was close to something big, and that's what scared me. If Karen was willing to twist the law and involve the police just to shut me up, what else was she capable of? And who else in the neighborhood was helping her do it, willingly or not? I knew I was running out of time. Every day I waited, Karen got more confident, and more dangerous. The fines kept coming, one after another, each more ridiculous than the last. A $250 charge for excessive sidewalk dust. Seriously. She was trying to bury me in paperwork and pressure until I either gave up or packed up. But I wasn't leaving. Not when I was this close to exposing everything. I finally got my hands on a key piece of evidence. An invoice trail that connected Karen's cousin's fake landscaping company to 3 other shell businesses. All of them billed the HOA for work that either didn't happen or was clearly overpriced. And the crazy part, each of those payments was approved by the board without any official meeting. I cross-checked dates, pulled signatures, and even found a blurry photo from the HOA newsletter showing Karen with one of the vendors at a private dinner. That was enough to raise serious questions, but I needed more. I needed someone from inside. So I reached out to Sarah, a former HOA treasurer who had resigned a year earlier without explanation. I didn't expect her to respond, but she did. She agreed to meet, but only on the condition that we talk in person. No phones. We met in a grocery store parking lot, and she looked over her shoulder the entire time. She told me Karen had forced her out after she questioned a $12,000 payment that didn't add up. She made it clear, Sarah said. Either I sign off, or I get buried in lawsuits. I chose to walk away. That meeting changed everything. I wasn't just chasing Frodi, was up against a full-blown abuse of power. Karen had created a system built on fear, fake charges, and silencing anyone who pushed back. And now I was public enemy number 1. That night, I got a letter not from the HOA, but from a private attorney. A cease and desist. They accused me of defamation, harassment, and misuse of HOA information. And just like that, Karen turned up the pressure. But I was done playing defense. The next move, mine, and it was going to shake this neighborhood to its core. Just when I thought I had Karen cornered, everything took another wild turn. That cease and desist letter wasn't just a scare tactic, it was bait, a distraction. While I was scrambling to figure out how to legally respond, someone broke into our garage. Nothing valuable was taken, but all the boxes with my printed HOA documents were ripped open. Files scattered, papers missing. No sign of forced entry, no security footage, No security footage. Know exactly what to look for and how to get in unnoticed. And that's when it hit me. The HOA had recently installed new smart locks on all the garages in the neighborhood, paid for by that same shady vendor Karen used for her fake invoices. Now, I knew for sure this went deeper than just Karen. Whoever she was working with had access to more than I thought our homes. Our personal data, maybe even our private emails. I started questioning everything. Was my Wi-Fi still secure? Were my calls being monitored? Paranoia started creeping in, but I knew it wasn't just in my head. This wasn't just about HOA fraud anymore, it was a full-on invasion of privacy. The next morning, I got another surprise. My mortgage company contacted me. Somehow, a lien had been placed on our home by the HOA. It was over unpaid violations, including one that dated back 6 months before we even moved in. That's when it became clear. Karen wasn't just trying to intimidate me. She was trying to take my home. And if she succeeded, she could erase every trace of what I'd found. I needed help, fast. But most people in the neighborhood were still silent, too scared or too loyal to Karen. Then, out of nowhere, I got an anonymous email. No name, no subject, just an attachment. Inside was a scanned board memo, signed by Karen, approving $18,000 in emergency funds for legal protection against rogue homeowners. That's when I knew I wasn't the only one she was targeting. There were others, and if I could fin.